functional consultant in Odoo. So let's review right now some of the things that we can do with the Studio. So Odoo Studio is very flexible. It allows many things. One of the main customizations that we can do is go straight to the database, and we can add new fields. I'm not going to go into deep on terminology of database or anything, because this is not a class that is going to try to teach you all the terms. So I just want you to get a glimpse of the things that we can do. So in this case, if I want to modify a database, basically I can add fields to existing models. There may be contact information, for example, that you need to add extra information. We can do that for existing fields, or we can create a new model which is translated into a table in a database, so we can continue growing our database. So we can also modify search views, which is part of the interface. We can modify forms. We can move fields around. Names, we can add names, widgets, or conditions. Another very powerful thing that Odoo Studio offers is how can we edit the reports, PDF reports. This is very important. So we can create reports from scratch, or we can modify any existing report. Another thing, flows, automated actions, for example. There are things that you can call, for example, if you want to send automatic emails when you create an order, it is possible. If you want to run a very specific Python code, you could do it. We're going to review a little bit of those options. We also offer, Odoo Studio also offer access controls, which is basically assign permissions to read, write, or delete options into your database. You can say, okay, this group is going to have permissions to write, and this other group is going to have permissions to delete, you name it. So everything that we do with the Studio, it's no programming knowledge required. I mean, it would be nice if you understand a little bit of XML, but it's not necessary. I'm going to run right now a flow so you have an idea that you really don't need to know coding. When it comes to businesses, it's very important that we understand one thing. When you walk in and you want to implement an ERP system, the expectations should be, it's not possible to adapt the entire system to your business. There are a few things that are not going to be quite there. Usually, if I have to give it a percentage, we can say 80% of the software that I'm buying is going to adapt to my process. The other 20%, usually, that's when the Studio for Odoo comes in, because it's going to allow us to adapt very specific processes in order to accomplish very particular tasks. So there's still going to be a few things that maybe they're going to be required to do some development. But, I mean, you are going to get very, very close using Odoo Studio to adapt to any process that you have in your business. There are a few things that Studio cannot do. Some of them are calculated fields. I mean, if you need to bring calculation, if you, I don't know, any kind of calculations that you're trying to do is not possible. If you want to use it on a mobile, that's also not possible. So any big developments, that's not considered Studio. So this is more for informative purposes. So when you drag and drop fields using Studio, what is really happening is that behind the scene, Odoo is generating code for you, so you don't have to code. So Studio is kind of like the bridge. So everything that you're doing is creating code behind the scene. Every time you modify a view, it does the same thing. So we want to be careful, and it's a very, very, very good practice that you test first all your business flows before you go ahead and go into production and do those changes. So keep that in mind. So right here, I'm going to jump straight because it's really fun. I mean, I'd rather show you how it's done rather than me showing a lot of slides. So let's do this. This is an example. I'm gonna run an example of a company. This is a computer component store needs to adapt their sale process to the computer industry. So let's look at it. Each product is produced by a manufacturer, and each manufacturer has a support phone and support website. So now, depending on the product, the manufacturer provides a 1-year or 2-year warranty. I don't know if many of you know that sometimes you go to the store and they tell you, okay, my store is gonna offer you 90 days. But the manufacturer is gonna offer you a year, 2 years plus. So you as a client, as owner of the store, I was like, how am I gonna handle that? I have to deliver that to my clients. I have to deliver that information. They need to know that. Odoo is not gonna come out of the box with those things. So we're gonna use Odoo Studio to include this information. So this is the case, this is the need, and we're gonna modify my sale process in order to adapt to this specific case. So once again, the store offers only a 90-day warranty, and the customers need to contact the manufacturer in order to claim the manufacturer warranty. Very basic. So the manufacturer information needs to be included at the order form, and I also need to modify the PDF. Whatever report I'm providing to the customer, I need to modify as well. So finally, I need to send an automatic email to the customer after the sale is confirmed with information regarding to my warranty. All those things are not exactly included in Odoo, but there's a need. My business has that need. How am I gonna change this process to make it happen? So I'm gonna show you right now. I'm gonna jump straight to the database, and we're gonna cover those steps. I'm gonna be jumping back and forward a little bit just to see how we're gonna handle each line. So the first thing is, as you can see right there, adapt my sale process. Obviously, which application do I need to use? Sales. So we're gonna jump straight to there. And the second thing that I want you to look at is I need to bring the information of a manufacturer. Manufacturer has a support phone and support website. Let's just start there. This is it. This is my database. So I'm gonna go straight to sales. Before I do so, I skip one step, very important. I have to make sure that my developer mode is activated. So right here, you're gonna find that option, and you can activate the developer mode. So many of those things, if you're gonna start using Studio, it's very important that you have activated that option. So let me wait a little bit. All right, ready. So let's go back to sales. Many of the things that Odoo Studio offers is I can modify menus, I can add more items, I can modify my list, I can add extra information, or I can also modify my main forms, which is right here. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a model that is gonna bring the manufacturer information. So I'm gonna activate Odoo Studio. Loading, okay. I can click on Edit Menu. And straight from here, Odoo allows me to create my own model. So I can create a new menu. I was preparing this database and I already have a model, but I'm just gonna, if I go right here, I can select from a list of models, and I already have it right there. But I'm just for testing purposes, I'm just gonna go right here, so at least you can see it. I can create test, and the demonstration is that you can see that right away I can create my model from here. I can do create model. I can call it test if I want to. I don't need much information. That's all the basic information that I need in order to create my model. I can just go click and save, and right there, it's already created. It's already going to recognize that I have a model with that information. But in this case, I'm just gonna go back and select an existing one. And I'm gonna call it manufacturer. I'll go ahead and confirm. And it's right there. I can drag it and drop to any section that I want. I'm gonna do it under the main menu so I can see it. Click confirm. And it is right there, that option. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close it. It's a brand new model, so it's not gonna have any data. So if I go ahead and click there, it's empty. So if I go ahead and create, I want to customize my model. I'm going to include the website and the phone number because that was required for my process. I'm going to go ahead one more time and activate Odoo Studio. And I'm going to drag and drop a text. This is going to be my website. I'm just going to call it website support. And one more was website support, and then the other one was phone number. I have all these options right here. I can add any kind of fields. I can do integer, like I can do monetary values. I can do selection values. We have all the different data types. I get to choose what I need. But in this case, it's just a text what I need. So I'm just going to do phone support. Okay. And just like that, I'm done. I can click and close. So every time I need to create a manufacturer, then I can just go ahead and do that. So a very common example, it's, let's think about processors. Most famous processors are gonna be, the vendors manufacturer are gonna be Intel and AMD. So I'm just gonna create right here, AMD, website, amd.com, support phone. I'm just making this up, but save it. I'm gonna create another one that I'm gonna call Intel. Phone number, save. So now if I go back to my manufacturer list, I can see that I have those saved. I can easily change my view to include the new fields that I added. I have a section right here where I can include new fields, or I have a section below where I have the existing fields. So I created a field for the phone number and the website. It's with the studio as easy as just dragging and drop those options. And that's it. I go ahead and close, and the data is there. So I already created the model. So now let's jump straight to the sales, because the requirement is that when I sell, I need to provide that information. But I'm gonna step one step before. I'm gonna configure my products first, because every product that I sell is gonna have a manufacturer. So I have some products right here as an example. And for example, I'm gonna have my AMD. I'm gonna configure my product to include those manufacturer information. I click right here. I'm gonna create a new section because I wanna keep it independent. I'm gonna drop, this is a data type, many-to-one, and I'm gonna look for my manufacturing model. It's right there. I go ahead and confirm. So I want to my product, as soon as I select the manufacturer, I want the system automatically to bring the phone number and the website. So what's the next step? I'm gonna bring a related field so I can bring that extra information. So I'm gonna select my model manufacturer, and now I'm gonna do the phone. I can go ahead and rename my field. And I'll repeat the same process for my website. So it was added right there. Go ahead right now and change my label, website. One extra thing, maybe each product has different warranties. Maybe some processors are gonna be 1 year, maybe some others are gonna have 2 years. So I'm gonna modify now my product and assign it a warranty time. This is gonna be related to my product. This is not related to the manufacturer. So there's one field that is selection. I can drag and drop it, and then right here call it this 1 year, 2 year. Confirm. And I call this warranty manufacturer. So yes, go ahead and close. So now I can configure my products to include this information. I'm gonna go ahead and click on edit so I can customize my product. If I go to manufacturer section, I can see that I have a selection of this data that I already inputted. I'm gonna say this is an AMD one. It's automatically bringing the phone number and the website. Now I'm gonna assign a warranty to this product. This is gonna be a 2 year. So I'll go ahead and click on save. So I already prepared my product to handle this information. We created the model, we're using it, we're applying to our inventory. Now let's do the sale, because that was one of the main requirements. So I'll go ahead and create right here I said my product. Oh, oops. My manufacturer, my name, confirm. And there's one extra field that I would like to bring. And that's my warranty. Yeah, there, okay. So ready. Now I'm gonna make the sale, and I'm gonna see how this is gonna work. So when I read the manufacturer, it automatically brings the manufacturer that I assigned in my product and the warranty that I'm using. So I can go ahead, now it's included into my business flow, the business that adapts to this specific process. I go ahead and click on save. The next thing that I want is I want to be able to print this data in my PDF report. So I'll go one more time right here. I'm going to go and open my PDF for the quotation. Just because of time, I'm not going to bring the other field, but it's the same idea. So now, I can close this. And if I go to print, and I want to view my quotation now is including the information that I added. So very simple. I went ahead and created all this process, and really quick, I got the data going. So next thing and final was I want to send an automatic email to my clients to, notify about the warranties. So Studio is very powerful. It's also going to allow you to do that. There's a section that is called automations. The purpose of this view is not to show you all the details, but the capabilities of Odoo Studio. How can we change or do things? So right here I can do email. When I create a sale order, I would like to send an email. I can have email templates prepared. Maybe I already did that. Maybe I have a very specific case. I'm going to use just one that is already created, and I'll go ahead and save. So that's it. At the time I confirm, my client is going to get that email with that information that I just did. So basically, we did everything in 15 minutes. Sometimes processes are going to be quite complex. There are going to be a lot of fields, a lot of data. Maybe we have to do more selections or include less data or something, but it's very, very possible. That 20% that I was talking about in the beginning of adapting your business flow, Studio could be very much capable of getting you close to that. So this is very exciting news. I mean, there's a lot to do, a lot of possibilities with Studio. So that's it for my presentation.
Let's give Mariela a round of applause for the presentation. Thank you. We are a little constrained on time right now. Before we prepare for the next talk, I'm sure Mariela will be happy to take any questions you have for her outside.
Yeah, no problem. If anybody wants to meet with me, I'll be right here. So, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again. All right. welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is the last talk this afternoon in the partnership track, and next to last talk in this room. Brett Heidman, our Director of Direct Sales, or Sales Manager in the San Francisco office, is going to be talking to us about how to improve the sales presentations for you guys. So let's give Brett a welcome and get going with the thing.
Thanks everybody, really appreciate it. Yeah, hopefully you can get something out of this talk. I don't know if people in this room do give demos or not, but even if you don't give demos of Odoo or any software, hopefully at the very least it can give you some ideas on how to organize presentations in general, because I think a lot of it overlaps. So the agenda in a crammed 20-minute period, is this too loud? Is this good? Is that I'm going to talk about just generally speaking, what is a good demo? You know, what does that mean? How do you know if it's being effective or not? With just a little bit of intro, a little bit of background. Then I'm going to highlight features and talk about specific features. What is good to show? What is generally maybe not as impactful? Subjectively. Then I'm going to talk about structure, how you actually lay it out, how you organize what you plan to show people. And finally, I'm just going to talk a bit about general communication and presentation skills. And that's hopefully the part that's going to have the most overlap with just generally presenting. And that's it, and then we'll do Q&A. So part one, intro. So that is a screenshot of me there's a video online of the talk that I gave 2 years ago in Belgium at Odoo Experience. At the very beginning of the talk on the same subject, on how to give a good presentation, I had a lapel mic, and like 10 seconds in, my first sentence, my lapel mic, I stepped on the cord and it fell on the ground, and I think I said something, but I don't know. It's a fond memory. It's a great way to kick off something like that. So when I saw this and not a lapel mic, I was like, good. But basically back then, that was 2 years ago, and I gave a talk about presenting and demos. And since then, I've still kept doing it, but with a few changes to my structure here. But I've been living in the overall world of Odoo for a while, like 4 years, doing demos the whole time, and talking about demos, evaluating demos. And so what I've been doing in the last year and a half is that I got to take on the role of building up the team. Whoops. I forgot to turn off Skype notifications. Lesson 1, if you're going to give a presentation, turn off notifications. But anyway, so I've gotten to build a large team over the past year. You better be sorry. Yeah. Oh, man, we're so interactive. It's great. I get to build a big team up, and we have to train people. We got to train the people that we have on our team, and they do a lot of demos. That's a big part of what we do to help people evaluate the software. So the first 8 weeks of what we do, it's very heavily focused on demos and how they're presented and stuff like that. So we have a whole system. There's a couple of people in the room that are going through it right now or have gone through it. The whole process, the prompts that we give people, the instructions for what we do, it's handled and then critiqued and evaluated. We watch people give sample demos every week through me and also with my coaches that I have, Andre and Loredana. And it's been a huge part of what I do this year, for sure. And it's like weekly critiques. Every demo is about 45 to 60 minutes. We watch it, and then we give feedback and say, well, this is what you could have done better. I get to see it from the perspective of a potential customer, which is really good, because the first 2 years, I was just the one giving the demos. Now I kind of get to see what it's like to receive it and watch it and pretend to be a customer. And I get to see a lot of the things that are great and very impactful, and I get to see a lot of the things that make me feel like, you shouldn't have done that. I think overall, to answer the question, what is a good demo, and we'll get into specifics, of course, to me, no matter what, the overall purpose is that you want to accomplish is the viewer should leave the demo, at the end of the demo, they should be more excited about whatever you're demoing than they were at the beginning. It sounds really simple, but if you just break it down to it, that's what it is. You're trying to make them more excited. You can replace that word with something else like reassured if you want to. Maybe they're already somewhat sold on what you're demoing them, but they just have a couple of, maybe a couple yellow flags that you want to smooth over. The main thing is they come in and their excitement level is here, and you basically just want their excitement level to go up here as much as you possibly can. You have that chance with the demo to do that. That's the purpose. And so how do you do that? How do you actually accomplish that? Well, it's, from my perspective, a combination of like 3 main ingredients. You gotta have product knowledge, no matter what it is. I don't care if it's, something as complex as an ERP software, or it's, one app that does, a couple little functions. The main thing is you need to know it well enough to not just understand it, but also you need to know how to explain it. You need to know how to put it into words that people can actually understand. It doesn't matter if you have an amazing functional knowledge of something if you can't communicate it. And then you got to carefully structure that. You can't just present it in any old order. It has to be in order that has the most effect. And there's, I'll talk about that. And then finally, you just need to have the communication skills, not just to present the knowledge, but also to keep the viewer engaged. You are competing with their attention span at every given time. Just like I'm competing with your attention span right now. You guys have been watching talks all day long. Chances are you're somewhat exhausted. Who knows? Maybe your brain is not at its peak right now. So at any given time, you got to keep the viewer engaged as much as you possibly can. All right, so moving on. Number 2. So features. And so I think you might have seen it on screen for a second, but what I did is I actually produced something. Keep in mind, a demo is not supposed to be training. That's a different thing. Training is a different category. A demo should never be a feature dump. Somebody used that phrase a couple months ago, one of the customers I was talking to. Yeah, feature dump is bad. You don't want to just unload a bunch of information. That's really not the purpose. Instead, just highlight what the customer cares about. And so what I did, we'll go ahead and open it up. I just drafted up a demo checklist document, and I printed it out. So if you guys want, you guys can just come up and grab one, and we'll probably post a link to it too. But you see the general idea. I've kind of put it into different categories here. And I've just included some features that I'm like, you should definitely show this, with Odoo specifically, if you are going to do a demo. And so getting back into the slides to talk about that a little bit more, I would just say regarding the checklist, I tried to just highlight the apps. I didn't feature every single app. I didn't talk about Fleet, for example, which is an app that I like to poke fun at sometimes. No, I try to highlight the apps that come up very frequently, and people talk about them all the time, very important ones. And keep in mind that a lot of the features on there, they're dependent upon whether they matter to the client or not. So a good example is variants, product variants. If you're familiar, you can have attributes like color and size, and then have a bunch of options. It's a great feature if the customer cares. You can just ask them right then, hey, do you use variants? Do you have attributes? And if not, obviously you don't have to force it down their throat. So anyway, just keep that in mind. Some of the features that I put on that document are, optional, of course. And I would also just say, this is my document. This is subjective. This is my own idea. This is from my own experience. But come up with your own. If you guys are doing demos and you have experiences that say somebody really likes this one feature, maybe they love Fleet. Maybe it's their favorite app. That's great. Then put it in your own checklist. And maybe even if it's not Odoo, I think just generally speaking, it's great to compile a list of must-haves, especially when you're training new people to demo things for the first time and they don't know what's important yet. So yeah, checklist is good. And I would just say what not to show. It could really be anything you could show, but what you should not show is, it sounds simple, but anything the viewer just doesn't care about. That's the main thing. I would just say, if the viewer doesn't care, there's no point. Don't waste your breath, don't waste the time, don't waste their concentration. Just know your audience, know who you're talking to. And that kind of ties back into the overall qualification call, if that's part of your process. If you are doing a call before you do the demo, where you're asking the customer questions, you're finding out what they care about, find out really what matters to them, and don't show them things that absolutely don't. Now, vaguely interested, there's sort of an area in between where they're like, yeah, I'm somewhat interested, maybe I would like to see that. You could do that. I would just say treat those subjects accordingly. In other words, maybe save them for the end if you have time. Don't dwell on them too much if it's not critical. And then, yeah, as far as features go, in most cases, you don't need to show absolutely everything. Sometimes people make this mistake. You don't have to have one demo where you cover absolutely everything. That is unnecessary. And the cool thing about Odoo is since it's modular, it makes it really easy to split it up by apps or by groupings of apps. So in other words, you could do a first demo where it's all about contacts, CRM, and sales. Those kind of related. And that maybe lasts 45 minutes with some questions at the end. And then you schedule another demo, ideally soon, like the next day if you can, on inventory manufacturing. This is just an example, and we strongly recommend that. You don't want to do a 2-hour demo unless it's necessary, unless you have everybody there, unless you know for sure they're all going to be paying attention, you've built it up to that point. In most cases, less can be more, I would say. So yeah, that's features. Getting on to how we actually present those features, how do we arrange it? How do we choose to order it? Structure. And I think as an example, kind of stepping away from Odoo for a second, just talking about presentations, let's consider the quadratic formula in mathematics. Yeah, it's that thing. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. I was not really good at math, but this just for some reason crossed my mind last night when I was thinking about this. It does a thing where it lets you solve for x if you're looking at a parabola thing. Is my clumsy understanding of it. But anyway, let's say that you are in charge of teaching algebra. You're in charge of teaching math to people, and you want to teach this concept. This concept right here, people can piece this together. This can make sense to you as long as they first understand multiplication, because there's some multiplication going on there, 4 times a. As long as they understand what exponents are and how you handle that. If you understand what a square root does, if you understand what negative integers do, and if you understand just friggin' subtraction, honestly. So I'm just saying, the idea applies to anything that you're ever going to present. You can show something like this, you can explain a concept, and it can have an impact, as long as all the necessary components are covered first. And so yeah, bad structure is a big problem, basically, and it's one that we see a lot for people that are first giving their demos early on when we're evaluating them. They tackle the wrong thing in the wrong order. They tackle things that are too complex that would just lead to questions and confusion. The main problem, I would say, is that it can confuse people, especially with something as complicated as an ERP system. You don't want to show them something and have them say, okay, I think I get what you're trying to say, but what was that one thing that was part of there? What was that one field, And at the very least, even if you can explain it and they can understand it, it probably won't have as much of an aha reaction or as much of a realization if you don't do it in a more logical order. So yeah, the less logical your structure is, the harder it makes it for you to explain things, the harder it makes it for you to find the words to make them understand too. So also just make it easier on yourself. Explain things and show things in a logical order of increasing complexity so that it's not so hard. And so here's an example in Odoo. If you have some familiarity with Odoo, hopefully this will make sense. This is one way. Say you're doing a demo and you want to create a purchase order for a person using the Purchase app. You make a purchase order and then you confirm it. Then you're going to receive it into stock in inventory. You bring it in. You've purchased the thing. You've brought it into stock. And then let's say you want to show how to make a product. You want to show how a product is set up in Odoo, how you configure the forms and the fields and stuff like that. My question is, could this structure be better? Yeah, some people are nodding. And the answer is yes, absolutely. I'm going to kill that because I think a better way to do it is, if you know Odoo, configure the product first. Go through how to set up a product, show how a product is set up with certain fields, especially the one where you show where's the vendor and do we buy this or not. Then once you've explained that and they know what a product is in Odoo, they know that they have vendors set to them, then it makes more sense to create a purchase order off of that. And then you receive it. So this is just an example. There's so many things like that in Odoo because it's all about workflows. It's all about how things connect to each other. And so general guidelines when it comes to structure, try to introduce new concepts, brand new concepts for the customer, that is, starting with the simplest thing and then build up in complexity. You don't want to start with the crazy complicated thing and then, out of order start talking about simpler things. Take them through the journey that way if you can. It's best to just define the key pieces first and then perform the workflows that use those pieces. Show them the pieces, then show them in action. And then similarly, I would say you can also showcase features in increasing order of how impressive they are. So in other words, you could say, well, here's one way you can do it, but hey, here's an even better way to do it. So a good example is in Odoo with quotes. You can send a quotation as a PDF. That's okay, that works. But then you show them the online quotation feature where they can actually interact with it and they can actually pay it online. That's much cooler. And I think it's much better to do in that order than the other way around. And then also just generally for demos, we usually say you should show reporting of some way or another, but generally do it last because for one thing, it's summarizing what you have done. You're always going to include it, and they can understand everything that you're reporting on because they've seen it all. So reporting is good last. Okay, last thing, I'm going to kind of blaze through it. I just want to talk about communication and presentation skills in no particular order because they're just thoughts that occurred to me when I was making this slideshow. So communication and presentation. So yeah, this is probably the part that can take the most practice, especially if it just doesn't come naturally to you. But it's really worth it to put the time in, and I've seen people go from being terrible to being really amazing and really consistent, honestly. It can go a really long way if you're good at presenting and good at communicating. It can actually make up for shortcomings in functional knowledge. It can make up for maybe poor planning. If you can just explain it well, I mean, it makes up for a lot. Because again, remember what we talked about in point 1 is you want to make the viewer more excited about the product than they were before the demo. So you're conveying excitement. So yeah, it doesn't matter if it's really complicated. It doesn't matter if it's going to take 5 demos. If you can make them excited, hey, that's great. Another thing, checking in. You got to try to check in with people, which is a little ironic because I haven't been able to check in with you guys because you're a crowd. But no, I'm just saying one way or another, you try to go, I would just say, this is a really ballpark estimate, you try to go no more than 10 minutes without some kind of interaction from the viewer. Some people might say every 5 minutes you should have interaction. Whatever, the main thing is you want to not just go on and on and on talking without having any response back. That's no fun for anybody, really. Especially because it's a demo. Demo's not a lecture in most cases. It's much more effective if it's a conversation, if it's more of a conversational two-person evaluation. Especially after you've just finished showing a workflow, you've just finished a workflow, like you went through a whole manufacturing process and the thing's done. That's a great time to check in. You say, does that make sense? The thing I just did you follow that? You know, things like that. And also just ask questions too. Ask the person, not just does that make sense, but also do you do things like that? Or we have this feature here in Odoo. Do you think that would apply to you? Ask for the more clarification and detail because it keeps them engaged. It keeps them paying attention, wakes them up. I don't know, things like that. Also, this can't be underestimated. You got to use value statements. And what I mean by that is one of the worst things that we see is when somebody goes and does a demo and it's kind of like reading a manual and they're just reading things on the screen. Like one example that we sometimes see is if you're talking about the product form and you say, you know, things like you can choose a product category, you can say the internal reference, you can say the price. That's terrible, don't do that. If that's what they wanted, they could read, like literally read documentation. Or you could say something like, if you're showing a dashboard for the first time for inventory, this dashboard shows receipts and deliveries. And then if they just move on from there, no, say something about it, say why, you know. You gotta, what I mean by value statements is always specify why it matters, why they should care. You don't have to sound desperate about it or anything like that, but it's just, what's the point? What's the business purpose behind it? What's the logic behind what we're showing? We don't just have features because we want to have features, I hope. Another thing, you want to be flexible. Part of this ties back to the fact that Odoo is really flexible, so we shouldn't be so rigid in the way that we want to, you know, force them through a presentation. So if a customer asks you a question that might veer you off what you were planning on showing them when you came up with your structure, that's okay, as long as you're comfortable with what you're presenting, and that's fine. You can take a detour. And of course, if you have the structure in mind really well, then after you've taken that detour, you can go back into what you were talking about. But it's good to, as long as it's relevant and as long as you're not already planning on showing it later, it's good to say, you know, sure, I'll take a minute and show you that thing if a customer asks you real quick, hey, could you talk a little bit more about, you know, price lists or something like that. And also, going, you know, the extreme version of that, some demos can really totally be completely improvised. We definitely have some senior salespeople in the company that, you know, if you have a phone call with a client for the first time and you say, hey, are you free? I can show you a demo right now. Then just go for it. And obviously you don't have anything necessarily planned, but if you know everything pretty well and you know what they need to see, yeah, it can completely be just winging it. And that's pretty fun. It's a little bit more on the risky side, but the cool thing is usually the customer has, or the viewer has slightly lower expectations because you didn't get to plan anything out. So if you mess something up, if you have a huge server error, if you don't make your point very well, it's fine. So yeah. Cursor control, this is a really simple thing, but you'll notice that I'm keeping the cursor still right now. I would just say sometimes we see people going like this and wiggling all over the place when they're trying to like make a point. That's kind of distracting for one thing. So use it very carefully, direct viewer attention. Generally speaking, I think slower movements are better. It's better to you know, gradually move it around like that. You're trying to direct attention. And then there's a lot of things you can do, you know, cool tools these days where you can make your cursor have spotlight mode, which is the thing where it kind of like, you know, zeroes in on a specific area and darkens the rest of the screen. You can magnify, some people have that kind of plug-in built in, or you can just make your cursor massive. This is actually my cursor that I'm using right now. This is not the default size of cursor, it's a little larger, yeah. But yeah, I know it seems simple, but hey, every little bit really helps when it comes to demoing. Avoid big dead silences. No, on the one hand, it's really great to pause after big statements. Pause, take a breath. I don't always do that. Sometimes, especially with the coffee, just like go. But no, let things sink in, especially if you've said something that you want to have an impact. But if you're typing in a form, we see this a lot, where people demonstrate like doing a contact form, and they're going to fill out like 5 fields, and then they just go silent. They're like type. And that's really boring and unnecessary, and people's minds will wander. So no, keep talking during that part. Say why you're doing it. I don't know, make small talk, whatever. But yeah, don't do full dead silences. So yeah, so Q&A. Nope, that's part of the presentation too. How do you handle Q&A? Okay, so I'm almost done, I swear. No. Gotcha. No. So Q&A, that's a really important part of it, a very important part of it, the interaction, right? If it's a really big group that you're demoing, which happens, you'll demo a whole room of like 10, 15, 20 people, whatever. I recommend withholding the questions until the end, like we're about to do. If it's a smaller group, I honestly recommend inviting the questions. Say from at the beginning, just say, hey, if you have a question, just chime in. I don't care. That keeps them more engaged and gives them, makes them more comfortable, makes them pay attention more. It's good. Customer engagement. Okay, and then finally, just this is maybe a hard thing to force, but try to gain a genuine enthusiasm and appreciation for what you're presenting, whatever it is. Odoo, from my perspective, is easy because it's a really cool software. There's a lot to it. There's a lot of things that you can hopefully not get bored by. Whatever it is that you're presenting, though, spend some time with it, thinking about it. Think about the thing that you're presenting, play around with it, whatever, and find something that actually resonates with you specifically. If you don't think it's super cool to build websites through drag and drop tools, that's fine. Find something else. Find something that actually makes you genuinely excited about it, because that's transmittable. They will be able to hear that. So thank you. Really appreciate it.
I don't see Q&A on the screen, but all right, we'll open it for 2 or 3 questions. I will ask that you wait
Is
for
there
the
another
microphone.
talk after this one in this room?
There is.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, Brett. I actually had a question on one of your Q&A tips.
Sure.
You had mentioned that if it's a smaller group, it's easier if we let them ask questions while you're presenting, instead
Yeah.
of keeping 20 minutes for the presentation and 10 minutes at the end.
Yeah.
So if there's a train of thought, and if one person starts, the other person goes on, third person goes on, you actually run out of time. So do you at that time tell them?
No, that's a really good point. You don't want to let it get out of hand. It's true.
Yeah.
If you feel like, if you look at the clock and you're saying, well, we've been spending too much time on it, then just be honest about it and say, well, I want to keep answering questions, but I really want to show you these things. So maybe we'll have a second demo or something. We can go deeper or something like that.
So at
It's
that
true.
point
You don't want to let it turn into Lord of the Flies
Yeah,
chaos. Yeah.
So at that point, do you cut them off and let them know we'll come back to the questions later, or?
I think so. Yeah. Within reason. Especially if you have things planned that
Yeah.
they will benefit from
Yeah.
seeing. Because sometimes people get excited, especially if you open the door for them like that. But
Right.
if you trust the fact that what you plan on showing them is better, yeah, for sure.
Cool, thanks.
I should say that within reason. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, this room's really, really large. So.
Hi,
really good.
really great presentation.
Thanks, man.
So you mentioned that you need to kind of focus on what the customer wants, but you as a presenter, you might know that there are certain things that the customer might really appreciate that they don't necessarily ask. So like for me, the Discuss app is really cool, and I think people would really like to see that, but they don't necessarily ask for it. Should you still demonstrate that to them?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a really good point. So I guess when they say they absolutely have no interest, that excludes things that they are not yet aware of, for sure. Because, if you ask them, hey, do you want the Discuss app? They're like, what is that? I don't think so. If you're thinking, sure they do. They want it. That's fine. But also, the Discuss app is a really good example. That is a free app. There's no necessarily cost in that. So that would be one of those things that I think I put it in my section called General Odoo Usability in the checklist. The chatter in general, things that tie into that. No, it's true. You're right. There are certain things where, even if the customer is not aware of it, there's a lot of things like that. A lot of people come to Odoo and they don't know what it's capable of. That's absolutely true. I guess what I just mean is completely separate industries and completely separate departments. Like, if they absolutely have no salespeople, why would you show them sales and CRM or something like that? You know what I mean? Like, If that's not on the table, you wouldn't want to waste time on that. Yeah. Good clarification though, for sure.
One
Cool.
more question, I think, and that'll
Oh.
be it, right?
Any tips on online demos?
Online demos?
When you are on the phone with somebody, if you're not seeing the person?
Oh, that's a really, really, really good question. Believe it or not, what we do internally at Odoo, based in San Francisco, mostly because of like, we tend to sell smaller projects and whatnot, it's pretty much all remote, and you rarely do see the person's face, sometimes through a video call. And so it's true. The challenge that it presents is that you can't see their face. You can't see what they're reacting to or whatnot, so you have to really rely more on audio cues, and generally dead silence from them is bad. It is a little bit different, but you get a feel for it. It takes practice, and a lot of it still is the same.
Okay, thank you, Brett.
Thank you
Thank
guys.
you,
Really
everyone, for
appreciate it.
joining.
And if you want this, might as well. I printed out like 25 of them, so here, you guys can just grab it.
And good afternoon. Thank you for joining us at this last talk at Portal 2 today of Day 2 of Odoo Connect. This last talk is Faisal Basar, CTO, Chief Technology Officer at Vista, and Odoo Gold Partner. And as you can read right there, the topic is going to be how integration and automation can transform your manufacturing options. So let's give a little welcome to Faisal and get going with the talk.
Thank you. It's always fun to be the last talk of the day. You know, it's so exciting. So today we are going to talk about, I'll make a small introduction about what Vista Solutions is. We will be talking about what roadblocks manufacturing companies face and how Odoo can help in those challenges. We'll also talk about a case study of what we did and what kind of results we got for the customers. But before I start, how many of you are associated with manufacturing, work for a company which does manufacturing or even implement for manufacturing? Okay, so we have quite a few. That's good to know. So Vista Solutions is a gold partner. We are essentially an enterprise solutions implementation company. We're based out of, we are local here in the Bay Area, but we have presence in Canada, in UAE, and in India. We focus on ERP solutions, but once we implement ERP, we also implement analytic solutions for our customers and machine learning solutions. We are related to Odoo. We are gold partners of Odoo. We've been associated with Odoo for a long time in the US, one of the earliest partners of Odoo. Fabrice talked about their growth, and we were there when they started with Odoo in US as one of their partners. We got Best Partner Awards in 2015, 16, and 18. And we're growing very fast, and all our growth is organic. So talking about the challenges faced by manufacturing companies, the first thing is decentralized data. We've talked to a lot of companies, and generally most of the companies, small to medium-sized companies which are in manufacturing, have at least 3 different systems to run their operations, right? So one would be their sales or the CRM system. The other one would be the one which they actually run manufacturing on, which might actually be outdated. And the third might be an accounting system. So the problem with this is you have data which is decentralized into different systems. You have your customers in your CRM, which are not the same in your accounting system, and your manufacturing orders are not related to your sales orders. So you cannot keep track of when you're going to deliver to your customers. Right? So this is very typical we see of manufacturing companies. And most important for companies is whether, depending on your type of manufacturing, to have insights into your supply chain. So firstly, from the procurement side, to have a robust MRP process is very important, so that you can, when you get an order from a customer, whether you are doing customized make-to-order products, or even if you're doing make-to-stock, when you get a customer order, to tell the customer of when they expect their shipment, you need complete visibility into your manufacturing process, into your supply chain, what is in your inventory, how much time it takes for you to order stuff, get it, and manufacture it. And this is not possible unless you have an integrated system. So what Odoo can do for you is, essentially, Odoo has a comprehensive solution for manufacturing companies. Odoo recently, in the few versions, they implemented manufacturing planning and scheduling, right? So that is one very important functionality for manufacturing companies, where they can use something called the master production schedule to plan their production, right? And the good thing is it is completely integrated with your supply chain, right? So essentially, if you get an order from a customer today, you know what is your manufacturing time, but you also know what is the lead time for your supply chain to deliver the raw materials so that you can calculate and tell a fixed and accurate delivery date to your customer. This is what Odoo enables you to do. It also enables you to do product life cycles, and we have, obviously, for some of our smaller customers, we have implemented product life cycle management within Odoo itself. We have also, for our more advanced customers who have a very complicated product life cycle process, we have also implemented separate PLM tools within Odoo. So they do the product engineering, and the engineering team uses an external PLM tool, and then we, in Odoo, we import the data, we import the latest version of their bill of materials and use that in Odoo for the manufacturing process. So it can be multiple. You can either use an external PLM tool and use Odoo for manufacturing, or also use Odoo for maintaining your bill of material versions and so on. With regards to CRM, you can have insights into your customers, which Odoo gives, and the other regular features about financially managing your customers in one system, right? So when you get an order from your customer and you need to see how much is the credit limit for that customer, Odoo enables all of that in one system because your accounting is integrated with your CRM system. So I want to talk about a case study which is very important, and you can probably relate to it. This is a furniture manufacturing company in Cleveland, Tennessee, where we implemented. Now this company they were into contract manufacturing, essentially. So, and you might be able to relate to this. So their manufacturing was very custom. So they would have orders for their furniture, which was custom manufactured, and they wanted this, and they wanted the system to manage that, which means when you have, when you're selecting furniture to manufacture, there are multiple options available for that, and there are certain rules, right? So there are certain, Odoo has a configurator, and I'll show you what we did with the configurator. There are certain rules of, hey, if you have this type of fabric, then you can only use this in a chair. You can only use, the arms can be of this type. So there are multiple rules which are in configurable product, which needs to be set up when you're placing the order. Now, another challenge we hear a lot from customers is the bill of materials. Depending on what you're doing, it could be, some customers want dynamic bill of material, right? So you want to be able to create your bill of materials on the fly if you are working with configurable products. And this is what one of the customizations we did, which I will show you about this customer, but a little bit stepping back about the challenges which this customer was facing. Essentially, they were, the value they were adding to the customers was custom ordered furniture in a very short lead time, right? So that is the value which they had for their customer, and their systems were not enabling them to give the delivery to the customer in a short lead time. And then also we had the problem, as I mentioned, of a product configurator. So there were a lot of rules when you come up to manufacturing, say, a complicated piece of furniture, on what options, when you're configuring the product, on what options are compatible with each other, right? So that logic was not there, and it's not there in any system, and we actually made it for them. And thirdly, it's they wanted visibility into their production processes. So they, in furniture manufacturing and in other type of orders, we have something called customer-owned inventory. So your customer will actually provide you with raw material, and you will manufacture it and then deliver the products to the customer. So that is, for that you need entire visibility into your production process, which we enabled for them. So this is a statement from our customer. Before they planned, they were implemented an ERP system. They looked at Oracle and SAP, and this is their testimonial. We have it on our website. You can look it up. The cost to implement Odoo was almost 10 to 15 times the cost of Oracle and SAP was 10 to 15 times that of Odoo, and the timeline was almost 18 months. Now this is very complicated project where we also had, they had legacy systems, and they could not do away, like they wanted all the data to be carried over from the past years into Odoo so they can manage their customers, their orders, and all that. So this is one challenge with customers. When you are replacing your ERP, it's a big change, but you have, your business is in operation, right? You have customer orders, you have manufacturing orders which are open, you have inventory, you have placed orders with your vendors which is on the way, right? How do you migrate all of that into all of the information about a running business into an ERP system and start running with it, right? So this takes a lot of planning and a lot of effort, so this is what we help them out with. So our entire process from start to end, including data migration, including training, was completed within 12 months as compared to 18 months, which some of the other companies were proposing. So we started with a detailed business analysis, talk to the customers, understand how they run their business. They had some very unique business processes, and this is where a partner like Vista comes in the picture, where if you have any unique processes which you need to be understood, we have experts who are from the manufacturing domain, who've worked for many years, come and talk to you, understand your processes, and see what is the best way to map it into Odoo, and if you need any customizations, what customizations need to be done. So there are certainly some companies which need customizations because their processes are unique, right? So we did the entire process. We did data migration. We have a user training. We also had a UAT process. Generally, we give at least 2 months for user acceptance testing. UAT stands for user acceptance testing, which serves the dual purpose of training the users, preparing them for the new system, and also testing the system. So what we do in UAT is we take a snapshot of your current operations, migrate it to Odoo, and give it to users as if they have started, they're already on Odoo. So they will be able to receive orders which were on the way. They will be able to process their manufacturing orders which are in process. And that's why we give a lot of time for user acceptance testing, because it's very important that when we go live and we flip the switch and turn on the new ERP system, they are all prepared. There are no surprises. So this is one very important step in our process for user acceptance testing. So some of the metrics which we actually measured for them, the invoicing process would take around 30 minutes, and after our implementation, it took 3 minutes. The reason being, their systems were disjoint, they were not connected, and it used to take a lot of time to do the invoicing process. Curation of bill of materials was reduced from 3 hours to 3 minutes, and I will show you what we actually did. Because it was custom products, they had to create the bill of materials manually, because each customer would be unique. They cannot create bill of materials beforehand and keep it ready. It had to be created dynamically, and we created a tool for them which would create this bill of materials on the fly, which kind of reduced the steps required from 3 hours to 3 minutes. And based on the MRP scheduling, which is out of box in Odoo, we were able to reduce 20% in the inventory. So that's basically cash, which you can use in your business. So I will just move over and show you some of the interesting thing we did for them. So, Odoo has a product configurator, right? What we did, and we are very proud of this, we call it configuring the configurator. So we made a tool based on which they can set up rules of how an order can be placed, right? So if this is completely custom, which has been made for them. So this is a product I have, and these are the different steps. It includes fabric. Oh, I'm sorry. Haven't done this out. Thank you so much. Okay, so this is a product where you see it's we create something called configuration templates, where you can define the different steps in the configurator. Before that, I'll show you the variants. So these are the variants for this particular product. So if they get an order for this product, these are the options which are available when you're configuring this. Required means this particular attribute is you need to fill in information for this attribute. Multi means you can have multiple selections when you're selecting this product. And so these are the different values which are there for the product. And this is the configurator. And this is where we configure the configurator. So for fabric, these are the different attributes which are available. We have something called restrictions. So if you have selected a certain product, you cannot use some of the different combinations. So you can have, you can create restrictions for your configurator. And this is where we specify which part of your process is manufactured under which work order, right? Under which operation. This is where you select that my fabric has these options available, and it is consumed, it is done in this operation called cut and sew, and this is the work order where it is done. So essentially, we have configured a system where they can actually add these options when they get an order. So what I will do is I will go to a sale order and probably try to create a new one. And I select configure my product. So this is just product. I'll select my template here. And this is where I can select the attributes. The list of attributes come up, where this is what I need to, I can select which attributes the order needs to have. Here is where I will, the options, so these options, as you see, these are dynamically created, right? Based on how I configured my configurator, I have these options available, and I'm creating the options here for the different values. And obviously, if you see, if I click on next, it will tell me that, hey, some of the attributes are actually required, which is what I configured in my template. And I select these options. And generate this product. And what the system has done with the options which I have created is in the backend, it has gone and using the options which I have selected, it created a bill of material on the fly. So this is my bill of material, which was created for a previous order. It has the options which I selected in that template, it has used that and created this bill of material on the fly. And also once I confirm my order, it has this, the manufacturing order, which has the dynamically created bill of material available. One more important feature we've done is for such companies which have custom manufacturing, sometimes they get changes in the customers call in and tell them, hey, I don't want this option, instead I want this other option. So for them, we created an option to change the variants from the manufacturing order. So I can actually go into my manufacturing order, and I don't have it here, let me see. And I can actually change this fabric from Unica to some other fabric. So the customer called and said, hey, I wanted to change this, and they do that. I have a change history here of what I actually changed. Once I apply the changes, the dynamically created bill of material will be updated, and my entire manufacturing process will now use this new raw material instead of what was there in the order, and it will automatically update in the sale order as well. So this is something which we have done for them. So that is overall what we have done for a customer. So with our Odoo implementation, we help them improve the accuracy of the financial data. This is after you've implemented the regular Odoo, some of the benefits which you get is that you get accurate financial data in the sense that your inventory is completely linked with the accounting system. Odoo has real-time inventory posting, which means as you get products, as you manufacture them, as you produce them, your inventory valuation is accurate, which means the systems are not disjoint. You get visibility into your production process. For this particular customer, we dramatically reduce the lead time for them so that they can turn around faster with their customers, and we had better communication internally and externally. So that is about our implementation. Any questions?
I am going to ask if anyone does have any question. Let's just wait for the microphone. We're live streaming and recording this on YouTube, so it just makes it easier to hear the questions. Anyone have any questions for Faisal? Sure.
So you mentioned that if it is in Oracle or SAP, it would have been taken more time. So how big the project is actually? How many people deployed in that project, and how much is the budget for this project?
So it was a sizable company which was doing custom manufacturing. In terms of our team, which we implemented, we had a team of 8 people, and this was for a period of 1 year. The overall cost, I cannot share the overall cost with you, but it was essentially a 12-month process. We don't have the entire team of 8 people throughout the process. Essentially, when you're doing the business analysis process, we have just a couple of people, and then we ramp up the teams as we do more customization and during the development phase, and towards the end, as we have the training and UAT done, then we ramp down the team, right? So that's what we do. Yeah. Yes.
How hard was it to implement the customer supplied materials? Because we run into that in our business where they buy the material from us, but they store it on our location so we can build it for them.
Okay, yeah, so that was a custom development which we had to do, which is, we call it customer-owned inventory. And in this particular industry, it's very standard for the customer to say, hey, this is my fabric, take it and use it. So the way you receive it, it's obviously not your inventory. It needs to be in a separate location, which is virtual location, which belongs to the customer. So you can't count that valuation as yours, but you still need to track it. And once you're done, you either ship it back to them or do whatever they ask for it. So we had a custom development for that. If you want, I can set up a demo and show you how that process actually works. But it was a little bit of customization. Yeah.
Have any other questions? All right, if not, let's give Faisal another warm of applause.
Thank you.
Give yourselves another one. You made it to the end of the day. And we hope you all join us at the beer garden for beer or wine. That's more your speed. And thanks again. See you all soon.